You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter @RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, except no imitation. I've got to start with Bears-Steelers. A game that, unless you're a fan of one of those two teams, you had a tough time getting excited for. The Bears have really disappointed this year. Justin Fields hasn't looked great. The Steelers aren't exactly world beaters. And look, through 3 quarters, it looked like the Steelers would easily win that game. Then in the 4th quarter, the Bears came alive and set up an incredible finish. There were 8 drives that happened in the 4th quarter. Only 3 of them didn't result in points. And one of the 3 was the last drive of the game, where Cairo Santos's field goal fell a hair short, hit off the crossbar. I mean, give these two teams credit. They gave us a really exciting finish. Give the Steelers credit for coming back and winning this game after blowing it in the 4th quarter. Give the Bears credit for making it competitive. They were down 20-6 entering the 4th quarter. They were down 23-13 at one point. But they just kept on fighting. I understand that there are no such things as moral victories in the NFL. But seeing as though a couple weeks ago the Bears got creamed by the Buccaneers 38-3, this is a loss that you can at least be happy with. It's not the kind of loss where you want to blow things up and clean house and fire everyone and cut everyone. It was a good showing with the entire NFL world watching. Should you have won that game? The answer is yes. But at the end of the day, there really isn't much to be upset about. Justin Fields had probably his best game as a pro. Completed 17 of his 29 passes for 291 yards and a touchdown. Looked really poised all throughout that 4th quarter. He added 8 carries for 45 yards. He looked like he was in control of the Bears' offense for the entire game. That was a step in the right direction for Fields. A guy who really hasn't looked that great since being anointed Bears starter, to put together that performance on a nationally televised game, Monday Night Football, the entire NFL world watching, and you're going up against a good Steelers defense, that was impressive. David Montgomery came back from his injury. He had 13 carries for 63 yards. He also had 2 catches for 17 yards. He looked solid in his return. Didn't look great, but didn't look bad. He was certainly solid. There's no question about that. I mean, this was a solid game for the Bears. It really was. You can't get too upset about it. Even though that fourth quarter had to be infuriating. Yes, you came back, but to not be able to seal the deal, yeah, that's tough. I mean, if you want to blame anyone for this loss, and I don't think it's fair to, but it is human nature, I feel like you've got to look at Jakeem Grant. The Steelers had just made it 23-13. Chris Boswell kicks off. It's returned by Grant. And he fumbles the football. It's actually recovered by Chris Boswell, believe it or not. Can't remember the last time I saw a kicker recover a fumble. But give Boswell credit. Now, at the end of the day, did it really matter a lot? Technically, no, because the Bears' defense did step up. They did force a Presley Harvin punt that bounced into the end zone. Roquan Smith came up big on that drive with the sack on Roethlisberger. But still, that's a possession that the Bears didn't have. You ended up losing by 2 points. I understand that the next points scored after that fumble were scored by the Bears, but still, that's a wasted possession. I mean, it seemed like the Ray McLeod fumble was the football gods evening up the ledger. I'll say this, though. Live time, and even after they showed the replay a couple times, I did not think that was going to stand as a fumble. It looked like the ball moved while McLeod was still upright, but I thought he still had possession of it. Then you have Caleb Johnson forcing the ball out while McLeod is on the ground. DeAndre Houston Carson picks it up and runs it back to the house. At least that's what I saw. But instead, the referees decided that the peanut punch by Joel Iyiegbuniwe, pretty sure I got that right, forced the ball out. That's where McLeod lost possession. I mean, I'm watching it now. I don't see that. I see the punch, which results in McLeod losing full possession of it. Like, the ball moves. There's no question. But McLeod is going to the ground. And he hits the ground. Then Johnson forces that ball out. So, you're telling me that if Johnson wasn't in the picture, that still would have been a fumble? I just didn't see a fumble there. The ball moved before, there's no question, but I thought McLeod still had it. But regardless, the score was 23-20. On the next drive, everyone's favorite rule reared its ugly head. The taunting rule. This is a big moment. It's 3rd and 8 at the Bears' 47. 3 minutes and 40 seconds left on the clock. Bear in mind, Chicago's only down 3 at this point. Cassius Marsh sacks Ben Roethlisberger. So it seems like the Steelers are going to need to punt. The Bears are going to have a real chance to come back and win this game. Then Marsh gets called for a taunting penalty. He was looking at the Steelers sideline. Maybe he said something. May have made the slightest gesture. Look, I understand that that's a point of emphasis this year. But come on, that's not taunting. The spin kick that he did afterwards is worse. Tony Correnti, the referee, said that the posture and running towards the Steelers sideline is what caused the penalty, not the spin kick. And then you see Correnti, in essence, throw a hip check at Marsh. What on earth are you doing? You can't tell me that wasn't intentional. I mean, that had nothing to do with the taunting penalty, according to Correnti. But what a weird sequence. That taunting penalty never should have been called. That's the biggest moment in the game, right there. I mean, I understand that taunting is a point of emphasis this year. Everyone is looking at it extremely closely. And look, if you're a player, you've got to know that. You've got to know that that's a point of emphasis. You want to tell me that Marsh honestly didn't think that what he did was taunting? Fine. I didn't think it was taunting either. But in a big moment like that, you've got to be really careful. I mean, celebrate a different way. I don't see what's wrong with that. Again, it wasn't taunting, but with everyone on such a hair trigger this year, you've got to be really careful. Chris Boswell is able to kick a field goal to make it 26-20. Then the Bears drive down the length of the field really quickly. They went 75 yards in only 66 seconds. Like, that was incredible. By the time you blinked, Fields had thrown the touchdown pass to Darnell Mooney. And you're thinking to yourself, wow, despite everything, the Grant fumble, the fumble by McLeod that may or may not have really been a fumble, the bogus taunting penalty, the Bears are going to win this game. But Ben Roethlisberger engineered a big drive of his own, made it 29-27. Then something interesting happened. Fields was able to get the ball to the Steelers' 47-yard line. There were 2 seconds left on the clock. So live time, I'm thinking to myself, you know what? They're going to have a chance at a Hail Mary here. And stranger things have happened. The way this game has gone, maybe, just maybe, the Bears can pull this off. Instead, Cairo Santos goes out to attempt a 65-yard field goal. If made, it would have been the second longest field goal in NFL history behind only Justin Tucker earlier this year. I mean, I disagreed with the decision, but Santos is a good kicker. I just thought you had a better chance of a Hail Mary working. I mean, Fields certainly has the arm strength to throw the ball 50 yards downfield. But Santos went out to try a 65-yard field goal, and it looked good. Like, it looked really, really good. Then you see it doink off the crossbar and fall short. That's how the Steelers won. So look, it was the right decision to send Santos out. If it had been a 64-yard field goal try, Santos probably would have made it. But it fell a hair short. The Steelers hung on to win an incredibly crazy game, an exciting game. It was a game that either team could have won, but the Steelers were able to eke out a win. Give both teams credit. They really have nothing to be upset about. But I'll tell you a team that really does have a right to be upset. The Las Vegas Raiders. Somehow, some way, more controversy has befallen them. Damon Arnett, the 19th overall pick, in not this past draft, the draft before, was cut by the Raiders because of a video that showed him making death threats while holding a gun. And I can't say I'm surprised by this. Arnett came into the league with character concerns. And we heard after the Henry Ruggs incident that Arnett was facing multiple lawsuits. Supposedly he was involved in a car wreck that injured multiple people. According to Ian Rappaport, he had actually damaged 4 rental cars in the span of a month. Admittedly, I didn't even know that was possible. 1 rental car, okay. 2, you're pushing it, but maybe 1 wasn't your fault. Once you get to 3 and 4, you're just a danger to everyone. I mean, look, Damon Arnett is a disgusting human being and should never play in the NFL again. But this speaks to a bigger issue. The Las Vegas Raiders now, in a very short period of time, have had to get rid of 3 people for non-football reasons. John Gruden, because he put incredibly hurtful things in writing. Henry Ruggs for killing someone. And Damon Arnett for threatening to kill someone. Mark Davis only has one choice at this point. He needs to blow things up. He needs to clean house in the front office. Clean house in the coaching staff. And clean house in the locker room. There is only one choice for the Raiders right now. A total and complete rebuild. You need to tear this team down and build it up from the ground up. It's just that simple. You have no other choice at this point. You can't have 3 incidents like this in such a short period of time and run it back next year. It just doesn't work. The NFL would need to get involved. If I'm Roger Goodell, I'm saying to Davis, this is terrible PR for everyone. You've got to clean house. You've got to point this ship in the right direction. I mean, I'll tell you, if I was taking over the Raiders, that's what I would do. I'd want to get rid of everyone. Even a guy like Derek Carr. I'm not saying that this is Derek Carr's fault, but Carr would have a ton of value if he was made available. If I'm going with a rebuild, I'm trading Derek Carr. And I just don't see how a rebuild is avoidable. This Raiders team is so John Gruden based and so Mike Mayock based that with those 2 guys out of the picture, you have the perfect opportunity to blow things up and build the team in your own image. It would be very easy to spin. Look at everything that's happened with this organization. We want to provide a great example for our young fans. We want to be a shining beacon in this community. We're not going to put up with anything. We're going to add high character guys. And we're going to build this team from scratch. I just don't see another way to go about it. And make no mistake about it, Mike Mayock needs to go. Okay? It's unavoidable at this point. We'll never know who was really responsible for the Raiders draft. Not this past draft, but the draft before. But Mayock's the GM. At the end of the day, he has some responsibility. This guy was on the NFL Network portraying himself as a draft expert. Meanwhile, this guy put together, or helped to put together, one of the worst draft classes in NFL history. You remember the Idzik 12 in 2014? We're going to be talking about this draft class as the Mayock 7. Or the Gruden and Mayock 7. Henry Ruggs is going to spend a lot of time behind bars. Damon Arnett was just cut. Lynn Bowden was traded after his rookie preseason. The Raiders were so down on him that they traded him before he ever had the opportunity to play in a regular season game for the Raiders. Bryan Edwards has worked out. Okay, even a blind squirrel will find a nut every so often. Tanner Muse was cut before ever playing a regular season snap for the Raiders. He got hurt his rookie season, then got cut before week 1 this year. John Simpson is a backup, and Amik Robertson was benched. To make matters worse, all 7 of those picks came in the first 4 rounds. The Raiders had 2 firsts, 3 thirds, and 2 fourths. If you get that draft class right, that can be the foundation for a Super Bowl winner. It just can. To have 7 picks in the first 4 rounds, that's the stuff that dreams are made of. Now, just 19 months after that draft, you only have 3 guys still on your team. One guy's working out in Bryan Edwards. Okay? Good player. No complaints with him. You have a backup in John Simpson. What am I supposed to do with him? And a Meek Robertson who got benched. He could be off the team next year. I mean, I'll say this. It takes skill to mess this up as badly as Mayock did. If I'm a Raiders fan, I'm furious. The Gruden thing, he did a great job of hiding that. No one knew he had that side of him. So, I can't get upset at my team. The Ruggs thing, that's not a Raiders issue. That's Henry Ruggs being just a sorry excuse for a human being. And that's the nicest way I can say it. But now with Damon Arnett, there's a pattern here. The Portland Trailblazers once had a nickname. They were called the Jailblazers. We're going to need to come up with something for the Las Vegas Raiders. In the Civil War, there was a very famous cavalry battalion that the Confederate Army had. They were called Mosby's Rangers. They were lightning fast. They left before anyone in the Union Army could help stave off these raiders. In fact, Lewis Powell, a man who was part of the conspiracy to assassinate Lincoln and decapitate the Union government, was part of Mosby's Rangers. In case you don't know that story, John Wilkes Booth orchestrated a plan. He was going to kill Lincoln. A man by the name of George Atzerodt was going to kill Vice President Andrew Johnson, and Powell was going to kill the Secretary of State, William Seward. Obviously, Booth succeeded. Atzerodt lost his nerve, went drinking, never really came close to assassinating the vice president. Powell nearly killed Seward. Not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but Powell did a number on the Secretary of State, did a number on a lot of people in Seward's house. It's worth researching. We all know that Booth killed Lincoln, okay? You'll learn that in elementary school. But no one knows, or at least very few people know, that that was part of a grander conspiracy to decapitate the Union government, to give the South a chance to regroup, and maybe, just maybe, they could come back and win the Civil War. Very, very interesting part of history. Maybe there's something with the Las Vegas Raiders there. Maybe we're going to need to start calling these guys Mosby's Raiders. I don't know. If someone has something better, let me know. That's just what I came up with. But this is disgraceful. Mike Mayock needs to go. He needs to be fired right now, quite honestly. Okay? It's just that simple. How is he still allowed to be GM? Who gets to whiff on 2 first-rounders in just over a year and a half and stay on the job? Look, I've been critical of Joe Douglas, but in all fairness to him, at least he hits on his first-rounders. Mekhi Becton is going to be a stud for a long time. I think he's going to come back from the injury just fine. Zach Wilson, I still think has a bright future in this league. And Elijah Vera Tucker is one of the best young offensive linemen in the NFL right now. Elijah Moore is putting it all together. I mean, I've got to be fair. Douglas at least has hit on his early picks. What on earth is Mayock done? You can't have a draft like this and survive. 7 picks in the first 4 rounds, and you only hit on 1. My dead grandmother could do better. Mayock needs to go right now. Blow things up if you're Mark Davis. No one's untouchable. Build that team from the ground up. Alright, now I'll give you some MLB Valk talk, because it's time to tell you who I think should win the major MLB Awards. We've got 4 to go through: MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, and Manager of the Year. Let's not waste any time. I've been looking forward to this for a really long time. The AL MVP finalists are Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Shohei Ohtani, and Marcus Semien. So, interestingly enough, none of these guys played for playoff teams. The Blue Jays came close, but they ended up missing. Meanwhile, the Angels were never in it. I mean, I had been pretty outspoken about wanting Aaron Judge to get it. I could have accepted Rafael Devers. Brandon Lau would have been interesting. Tim Anderson would have been interesting. Xander Bogaerts would have been interesting. Kyle Tucker would have made sense. But the thing is, though, with these 3 finalists all coming from non-playoff teams, I need to amend my criteria. So even though I wouldn't have picked this guy at the outset, now that these guys are the finalists, I've got to evaluate these guys as is. And with Guerrero and Semien both being Blue Jays, I feel like they cancel each other out. I don't think you can have an MVP from the Blue Jays if there's someone else almost as valuable. Was Vlad Guerrero more valuable to the Blue Jays than Marcus Semien? In my opinion, the answer is yes. But with Semien in the mix, I don't think I can cast my vote for him. I've got to go with Ohtani. And I don't feel good about it. People are saying, oh, this is such an easy pick. This is a slam dunk. No, it's really not, okay? I don't feel good about picking Shohei Ohtani. In fact, there's a part of me that would rather pick Vlad Guerrero. But with Semien in the mix, I can't do it. I'm a big believer in the word valuable. Okay, that means something to me. It's not most outstanding player. It's most valuable player. And if you take Vlad Guerrero away from the Blue Jays, they're still really, really good. Okay, they have Semien, they have Bo Bichette, they have Teoscar Hernandez. With Semien in the mix as one of the finalists, I just can't pick Guerrero. I can't pick Semien by the same logic. So it has to be Ohtani, a guy who had a great season. Alright, this guy did things that we've never seen before. You want to tell me Babe Ruth did it? Yeah, that's great. How many people alive today saw Babe Ruth? Okay? We didn't. I mean, this guy had 257 with 46 home runs, 100 RBIs, and 26 steals, while also going 9-2 with a 3.18 ERA and having 156 strikeouts in 130 and a third innings. In totality, it is one of the greatest seasons in baseball history. If you combine what Ohtani did as a hitter and what he did as a pitcher, it's insane. It's something that may not even be duplicatable. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the WAR stat. Okay? I promise I'm not. But there is something with WAR and Ohtani that's kind of interesting. As a pitcher, Ohtani had a 4.1 WAR, according to Baseball Reference. As a hitter, he had a 4.9 WAR. So to put that number into perspective, Giancarlo Stanton, who had a really, really good season, hit 273 with 35 home runs and 97 RBIs, had a 3.1 WAR. So according to WAR, this guy was better than Stanton as a hitter and as a pitcher. I mean, that's impressive. Alright, you combine the two, Ohtani's the MVP. I don't feel great about it. I really don't. I like my MVPs to come from playoff teams, but seeing as though the finalists come from non-playoff teams, I've got to vote for Ohtani. Moving on now to the National League. The finalists there are Bryce Harper, Juan Soto, and Fernando Tatis Jr., meaning that the 6 finalists all come from non-playoff teams. Hugh Chalmers is rolling over in his grave. If you don't know who Hugh Chalmers was, he was an integral figure in early baseball awards and was also a car magnate. You gotta wonder how Austin Riley isn't a finalist. You gotta wonder how Freddie Freeman isn't, Ozzie Albies, Nolan Arenado, Trey Turner, players from playoff teams. How can you be valuable to a losing team? They missed the playoffs with you, they'd miss the playoffs without you. I just don't get it. I mean, I don't feel good about any of these MVPs, but I guess the best one is Fernando Tatis Jr. He did have a great season. He had 282, led the National League in home runs with 42, had 97 RBIs, had 25 steals. Very likable player, fan favorite in San Diego. Very easy to root for, seems to have fun playing baseball. We need more of that. This guy signed a huge contract in the offseason. 14 years, worth $340 million. That was a little too risky for my blood, but you know what? It looks pretty smart right about now. You know how much he made this year? $1,714,286. And this guy's an MVP finalist. Absolutely unbelievable. And remember this. He wasn't even signed by the Padres out of the Dominican Republic. He was signed by the White Sox. He was traded less than a year later to the Padres, along with Eric Johnson, for James Shields. Let me repeat that. The White Sox traded Fernando Tatis Jr. to the Padres for James Shields, a guy who in 2.5 years with the White Sox went 16-35 with a 5.31 ERA. His last year in the majors, he led the majors in losses with 16. That will go down in history as one of the worst trades in baseball history. Also, one other thing that I like about Tatis, he had more RBIs than Soto and Harper. Tatis had 97. Harper had 84. Soto had 95. So, my vote goes to Tatis. Moving on now to AL Cy Young. The finalists there are Gerrit Cole, Lance Lynn, and Robbie Ray. Fortunately for Cole, we can't look at what he did in the playoffs for this award. If we could, there is no way on this earth he would get my vote. But since we can't, Gerrit Cole gets my vote for AL Cy Young. He led the American League in wins with 16. Was only 5 strikeouts behind Robbie Ray. Was 3rd in ERA. I like wins, okay? What can I say? At the end of the day, pitchers are paid to win games, okay? You want your pitcher to go out there and get a win. You want your team to win. Does that always happen? Absolutely not. And are there cases where the pitcher pitches great but doesn't get the win? In fact, he may even get the loss? No question. But how do we evaluate pitchers all time? We look at wins. We look at the 300 win club. We don't look at ERA. Do you even know who the career leader in ERA is? It's Ed Walsh. All due respect to Ed Walsh. Great pitcher. Hall of Famer. He's not the best pitcher in baseball history. You know who's second? Addie Joss. Another great pitcher, another Hall of Famer, not the second best pitcher ever. You look at wins, Cy Young and Walter Johnson are 1-2. If you wanted to put those guys as your 1-2 in terms of best pitchers ever, I couldn't disagree with you. Let me ask you something. You go up to a pitcher. You ask him what's more important to him, getting the win or having a low ERA. What answer do you want to hear? The answer should be the win, right? I mean, if it's ERA, think about it. Let's take that to its logical conclusion. That means that you can go 0-30, but have a 1 ERA. So your team lost 30 games. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum. You can go 30-0, but have a 9 ERA. Your team still won 30 games. At the end of the day, you want the pitcher to go out there and get the win. You want him to win the game for your team. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes you need to mix and match with the bullpen. But wins matter more than ERA. Okay? It just does. So let me get this straight. Hyunjin Ryu didn't have a good season. He went 14-10 with a 4.37 ERA. Finished second in the American League in wins. But because he had a 4.37 ERA, that means he had a bad season? That's a bunch of nonsense. He had a good season. And a very good season. I'm not saying he had a great season. ERA matters. It just doesn't matter as much as wins. I like wins. Because of all that, Garrett Cole is my pick. Moving on now to NL Cy Young. The finalists there are Corbin Burnes, Max Scherzer, and Zach Wheeler. In other words, the top 3 pitchers in the National League last year in terms of wins, Julio Urias, Adam Wainwright, and Walker Buehler, weren't even finalists. Can we just agree that they got that wrong? Can we just agree that Julio Urias should have been a finalist? Maybe you don't want to cast your vote for him. But come on, you gotta make him a finalist. The guy won 20 games. 20 freaking games. No other pitcher had more than 17. He was 20-3 with a 2.96 ERA. How is he not even a finalist? What were these writers watching? That's just stupid. Okay, there's no other word for it. That is just utter stupidity by the voters. So I guess I've got to pick Max Scherzer. I don't feel good about it. Nothing against Scherzer. He had a great year. Went 15-4 with a 2.46 ERA. Absolutely dominated with the Dodgers. Went 7-0 with a 1.98 ERA. But on no planet was he better than Julio Urias. On no planet was he better than Walker Buehler. You want to tell me he was better than Wainwright? You can make that argument. I don't feel good about these picks. I really don't. I'd love to talk to these writers to understand their logic. Do these people watch the games? I mean, seriously. Moving on now to AL Rookie of the Year. The finalists there are Randy Arozarena, Wander Franco, and Luis Garcia. You may think that my vote would go to Garcia, given what I said about Guerrero and Simeon canceling each other out. No, it doesn't work that way for Rookie of the Year. Doesn't work that way for Cy Young. Doesn't work that way for the other awards. MVP stands for Most Valuable Player. That's important. Valuable. Rookie of the Year goes to the best rookie in the league. And all due respect to Wander Franco, but he did not have as good a year as Randy Arozarena. And I've got a tough time giving an award like this to a pitcher over a hitter. Generally speaking, a hitter just has more impact than a pitcher. If the pitcher had a great season, okay, I'd give it to him, but no. That's not the case here. Garcia went 11-8 with a 3.48 ERA. That's a really good season, but that's not great. Arozarena hit .274 with 20 home runs, 69 RBIs, and 20 steals. You knew after his epic playoff performance in the bubble that he had a great chance to win Rookie of the Year. He was the wire-to-wire favorite. And I've got to pick him here. Moving on now to NL Rookie of the Year. The finalists there are Dylan Carlson, Jonathan India, and Trevor Rogers. Let me knock Trevor Rogers out right away. There is no chance on this earth that I'm going to cast my vote for Rookie of the Year for someone who went 7-8. I understand that Rogers made the All-Star team. He had a .264 ERA. Looks like he's going to be a really good pitcher in this league for a long time. But I can't give Rookie of the Year to someone with a losing record. Okay, that's absurd. Say what you want about Felix Hernandez. Say what you want about Jacob deGrom. But at least they won their awards while having winning records. Losing records don't work for me. So that brings us to the hitters. And in every metric, India was better than Carlson. He had a higher average, 269 to 266. He had more home runs, 21 to 18. He had more RBIs, 69 to 65. He had more steals, 12 to 2. He had a higher on-base percentage, 376 to 343. He led the National League in getting hit by pitches, with 23. He struck out less, 141 to Carlson's 152. You want to tell me Carlson played in more meaningful games? You can make that argument. I like the meaningful games argument, but that's not enough for me to push Carlson over India. I've got to go with India as my NL Rookie of the Year. Moving on now to AL Manager of the Year. The finalists there are Dusty Baker, Kevin Cash, and Scott Servais. What, no Aaron Boone? Only kidding. Look, Dusty Baker did a great job with the Astros. Took over an impossible situation. Led them to 95 wins. From the word go, they looked like the best team in the AL West. He can't get Manager of the Year over Kevin Cash. The job that Cash did after his team traded Blake Snell and saw Tyler Glasnow get hurt early is nothing short of incredible. They finished with the best record in the American League. They were the only team in the AL to get 100 wins. And there is also something to be said about the fact that they played in the toughest division in the league. The AL East had 4 teams finish with at least 91 wins. the Rays, Red Sox, Yankees, and Blue Jays. For the Rays to come out on top by 8 games is really impressive. I wouldn't be too upset if it was Baker, even though I'm not a big Baker fan. I do think he's overrated. Cash, I feel like, is overrated a little bit too. I don't think he's a great postseason manager. But I've got to be fair. This is a regular season award, so I've got to go with Kevin Cash. Scott Service doesn't even deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as these guys. I understand that there needed to be a bronze medal winner, but that should have been Alex Cora, or Charlie Montoyo, or Tony La Russa, or Bob Melvin, not Scott Service. That's absurd. Finishing things up now with the NL Manager of the Year. The finalists there are Craig Counsell, Gabe Kapler, and Mike Shildt. It's kind of interesting. Shildt gets fired, and he's a Manager of the Year finalist. Let me give a piece of advice to whoever takes over the Mets front office. Hire Mike Shildt. Don't interview anyone else. Hire Mike Shildt. But he's not Manager of the Year. And it's not Craig Counsell either. People expected the Brewers to be good. I'd put Counsell third, Shildt second, and Kapler first. And it's not even close. Gabe Kapler led the Giants to the best record in baseball, 107 wins. This was a team that was picked by most people, including me, to not make the playoffs. In fact, I didn't even think they'd finish over 500. They won 107 games. Their pitching was phenomenal. Their hitting was phenomenal. This was just a great team. And to win the NL West over the big bad Dodgers is incredibly impressive. There is no other logical choice. Gabe Kapler needs to win NL Manager of the Year. There were some other baseball stories that I wanted to talk about. The first one is an interesting report involving Luis Castillo. According to John Morosi of the MLB Network, the Reds are open to discussing Castillo in trade talks. Now, I'm not as crazy about Castillo as other people. Like, I saw Yankees Twitter going nuts. They want Castillo desperately. And I understand it. He had 192 strikeouts. He had a 3.98 ERA. He's never had worse than a 4.3 ERA. He stayed healthy all throughout his career. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't be upset if Luis Castillo became a Yankee. In fact, he'd remind me of my favorite moment in the Yankees-Mets rivalry. Luis Castillo dropping the A-Rod pop-up on a Friday night, resulting in the Yankees winning one of the most improbable games ever. I was there. Bouncing off the walls. Here's my concern, though. Castillo went 8-16. Okay, he led the majors in losses. And don't give me the argument that the Reds were a bad team. They went 83-79. That's not great, don't get me wrong, but that's not terrible. Like, if this guy pitched for the Orioles, okay, 8-16, I get it. For the Reds, no, that doesn't work for me. He also led the National League in walks with 75. I'm not crazy about that. In fact, he's always had a bit of an issue with walks. Look, I like Castillo. I think he's a very good pitcher. He's young. He's going to turn 29 in a month. He's under team control through this coming season and the season after. I'm just not in love with him. I like him. And again, I wouldn't be upset if the Yankees traded for him. In fact, every team in the majors should inquire on Castillo. You can never have too much pitching, right? I just don't think he's the kind of guy who you mortgage the future for. And I've seen some people clamor for that. That's not how I feel about him. I like him. Good pitcher. Wouldn't say he's great. I'd be willing to give up a Gallo or Rizzo type haul for him, but not much more. But again, every team in baseball should be in on Castillo. And when you have a guy like that, the bidding can get crazy. So it wouldn't stun me if Castillo was traded for a super duper package of prospects. Moving on now to the Cardinals, re-signing TJ Mcfarland to a 1-year deal worth $2.5 million. He can earn an extra $500,000 in incentives, but he's guaranteed $2.5 million. And I like this move for the Cardinals. Mcfarland was a really good lefty for them out of the bullpen. Him and Genesis Cabrera were a really good combo. Andrew Miller really disappointed. You know that the Cardinals are going to move on from him. So bring Mcfarland back. You should always have 2 lefties in your bullpen. One for high leverage situations, and another one for lower leverage situations. Mcfarland can do either one. After struggling for the last couple seasons, he put together a really good year for the Cardinals. Went 4-1 with a 2.56 ERA. I like Mcfarland. To get him for $2.5 million is an absolute steal. Great job by the Cardinals. I'll close this show out by ridiculing the Dodgers for signing Andrew Heaney. It's one thing if you wanted to sign him to a cheap deal. You want to give him a chance to right the ship. Sure, okay. I can understand that. It's another thing to sign him to a 1-year deal worth $8.5 million. $8.5 million went to a guy who went 8-9 with a 5.83 ERA, who for the Yankees gave up more home runs than I've ever seen in such a short period of time. This guy had a 7.32 ERA for the Bombers. He gave up 3.3 home runs per 9 innings. If you want me to get specific, he gave up 13 in 35 2/3 innings for the Yankees. It was so bad that he was removed from the starting rotation, went into the bullpen as the mop-up guy, and even got sent down to extended spring training. He didn't finish the year with the Yankees. I have a list on my iPad. You know how Richard Nixon had an enemies list? This is sort of that, except for New York Yankees that I really, really hate. This is not a list that you want to be on. This is a list that includes such immortals as Javier Vasquez, Jeff Weaver, Esteban Loaiza, Sonny Gray, Kevin Brown, etc., etc. Even though Andrew Heaney only pitched in 12 games for my beloved Yankees, he is on that list. $8.5 million. I'm in the wrong business. Why couldn't I be a lefty? The Dodgers have a lot of uncertainty within their rotation right now. Clayton Kershaw's a free agent. Max Scherzer's a free agent. And God only knows what's going to happen with Trevor Bauer. So that means that they entered the offseason with a rotation of Julio Urias, Walker Buehler, Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May, and blank. That blank has now been filled by Andrew Heaney. I feel sorry for you, Dodgers fans. This basically signals that you're not going to bring back Kershaw, and you're not going to bring back Scherzer. You want to tell me you needed a replacement for May anyway, because he's probably not going to be ready for the start of the season? He's still recovering from Tommy John surgery? Okay, that's fair. Let me introduce you to David Price. You also have some really good prospects. Guys like Ryan Pepiot, Bobby Miller, Andre Jackson, and Landon Knack. All of those guys would be better options than Andrew Heaney. $8.5 million for Andrew Heaney. Who on earth was rushing to give Andrew Heaney $8 million? There was a rumor that said the Yankees were interested in bringing him back. If the Yankees had brought Andrew Heaney back, there would have been a riot. Yankees fans hated this guy. I hate this guy. There is no universe where this makes sense. If you were to have brought him in on a minor league contract or like a cheap deal around the TJ McFarland range, okay. I wouldn't be screaming and hollering about this right now. $8.5 million for one of the worst pitchers in baseball. I'm in the wrong business. You know that Family Guy episode where in a cutaway, Peter is teaching the homeless how to get by? One of the tips that he gives is for them to have a lot of kids. That way that increases the chances of one of them making it big in Hollywood. So who's paying the bills? Hollywood kid. Parents, raise your kids to be lefty pitchers. because they'll pay your bills forever. You don't need to be any good. You'll always have teams interested in you because you're a southpaw. I'm telling you, raise your kids to be lefty pitchers. Until tomorrow, I'm Jacob Valk, and always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.